Thank you so much, Craig. It's a real honor to be with all of you this morning. Thanks so much for inviting me and Jalon and Mel to join you today. Obviously, as a city, we're in a really, really tough spot right now. And in terms of the violence that's plaguing the South and West Sides, after a couple of years of making progress, last year was an unbelievably tough year. And unfortunately, this year, the first 3 months, the first quarter has been even worse. We're up about another 40%. And as Jalon always says, these aren't numbers. These are real lives. These are mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters and aunties and uncles. And it's too much. And I always try to be real honest. If there's good news, I'll share good news. If it's not good news, I got to be honest about that. But right now, we're on track to have the most violent year in the history of Chicago, And violence is already too high. So I think we all feel a huge sense of urgency to do something different, to reduce these numbers now. The first 3 months were not good. We have a chance to make the next 9 months much better. And this, for me, is never about pointing fingers or laying blame or anything. We're all struggling now. This work does nothing, it doesn't humble you. None of us are doing enough. And as we heard from Pastor Mac and others earlier, the only way I know how to do anything, Craig's a football player, he's an Arne, I'm a basketball player. The only thing I know, the only way to make progress is by working as a team. None of us can do this by ourselves. And so coming together, working in the communities that are plagued by the most violence, and working on those blocks where we have the biggest challenges. And we all know, people say, Austin is violent, North Lawndale is violent. There's both some truth to that and some falsehood. There are parts of Austin that are amazingly safe. There are parts of North Lawndale that are amazingly safe. That's true in every one of our neighborhoods that are plagued by violence. But there are also specific blocks and areas where things aren't right and where it's not fair. And where, particularly for our children growing up, it's much more like growing up in a war zone than it is just growing up in a healthy and safe neighborhood. And it's never our children's fault when it's like that. So we're doing everything we can to expand outreach, to work directly with the young men and women most caught in these cycles of violence, those most likely to shoot and be shot. For all of our pastors, on the call, obviously, what you do on Sundays is critically important every Sunday, especially tomorrow. But what we're doing the other 6 days and what we're doing maybe more specifically those other nights in the community is desperately important as well. And we need your help. And Jalon's going to walk through the neighborhoods and the areas where we need the most help. The people who are caught in these cycles of violence, we all know, honestly, most of them aren't walking into your churches Sunday morning. And we just can't say our building's open. We got to go out to the streets. We got to meet them where they are on the blocks and spend the time and build the trust and give them a reason to put down the guns. I'm radical on this. I would love to get rid of all the guns tomorrow. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen. America has an obsession with guns. I think often, I hate to say this, I think we love our guns more than we love our children. But what we have seen for years, past 5 years at CRED, is we have seen young men and young women who used to carry guns, who used to shoot a lot of guns, put down those guns because they had a sense of hope and support and a chance to build a better life. And the faith-based community is just an extraordinarily important partner in helping folks to change their lives. And I think that's obviously what you guys do all the time. It's in your DNA. But we have to start reaching the folks that need the most help. And if we can do that, this is a dark time, it's a difficult time. I'm actually unbelievably hopeful. I know what's possible. That's what sustains me, because I've seen day after day, men and women who have been through a lot, who've done a lot, who've seen a lot, transform their lives. So nobody can tell me what's not possible. What we're not doing is we're not reaching enough of those blocks. We're not reaching enough of those men and women. We have to start to do this work at scale. And your partnership, walking with us, pushing us, challenging us, working together for those most at risk, most caught in these cycles of violence. If we can do that, I absolutely believe that as tough as things are right now at the start of April in 2021, that by the end of April, we can be in a much better place. And I think we owe it to our city, we owe it to our communities, we owe it to our children to do that. So I'll stop there, turn over to Jalon to sort of walk through how we think about this, how we try and be very strategic, very thoughtful, not scattershot, and how with a laser focus in your partnership, we think we can get to a better place And then after Jalon, Mel will talk about where we want to go from here. So thank you so much for giving us the time. Craig, thanks for being an amazing partner. Jalon, all yours.
Thanks, Arne, and thanks, Craig, and thanks to all of the faith-based leaders on this call and all of the speakers that preceded us. So peace and blessings to all. It's definitely, it's an honor to speak to a virtual assembly of God-fearing men and women. So what I'll do, just to piggyback off of Arne, I will share some data. I will talk about some 2021 violence reduction goals, and then briefly provide an overview of street outreach, where those efforts are actually concentrated. And then most importantly, we will talk about some actionable commitments for this group. And so first, and you can stop the screen share for a moment. So I just want to just re-echo what Arne shared. I mean, 2016 was a critical spike for our city. We lost nearly 800 people. 2017 to 2019, 3 consecutive years of double-digit reductions in homicides. And then in 2020, again, that spike where nearly 800 people were killed. The official number is 769. The city portal actually reports 786 killed last year. And so I just want to just share March 30th, Tuesday, we actually convened a virtual assembly of more than 400 street outreach workers representing 36 highest impacted communities across the city. And we actually adopted a goal of trying to reduce killings this year compared to last by 20%, which would actually mean 157 more lives saved this year as compared to last, despite troubling first quarter numbers. And just to point out, some of you all know this, but our city has not seen under 400 homicides since 1965. So that's one critical milestone that we need to get to. And then I would say the other one is actually getting this city under 100 homicides to put us on par based on our population with cities like New York City and LA. I do want to just point out 2 other spikes just for our Chicago history. 970 people were actually killed in 1974. 943 people were killed in 1992. I bring that up because two things are important there. The buildup to getting us to nearly 1,000 homicides. We crossed this 800 homicides threshold, and then we kind of built up to those spikes. And then what we saw is, even though those were kind of peaks, the years kind of following those, we saw, homicides over that 800 homicide threshold for some years to come. And so what we saw in 2016, a lot of work, a lot of efforts, the faith-based community, street outreach, law enforcement, everybody kind of pulling together for us to actually start seeing what was a spike not turn into a trend. And then we saw again a spike in 2020. So we're fighting again to ensure that the spike that happened in 2020 does not turn into a trend. In the first quarter, it's already looking like a trend and we're going in the wrong direction. So we are in a crisis mode right now. So this conversation is really important. In terms of street outreach, and I do also look at street outreach as peacemakers, similar to the way that all the faith-based leaders represented on this call are peacemakers. And Craig, you can start showing that screen share. For those that may not be so familiar with street outreach, the underlying philosophy is this: if you're serious about stopping shootings in any community, you have to work with the shooters and potential shooters within that community. And so if you think about, who's actually best suited to actually work with those, we're talking about men and women that have credibility, have what we call LTO, license to operate, and they're passionate about actually stopping violence. And we train those individuals. And one of the things that I will share, this is a reality of this work: you cannot train the wrong workers to be the right workers for street outreach. So it's definitely a specialized space. What they're doing, 2 really important things: one, interrupting conflicts that could actually erupt into shootings and killings. They're doing this interpersonal conflicts, but also group related conflicts. And what's also part of the conflict mediation is what we call non-aggression agreements. So we have men and women street outreach workers working with groups across the city who are actually in war right now and actually establishing agreements for peace to actually minimize and or eliminate the back and forth, the tennis match that happens with the shootings back and forth between groups. And what we have seen is where we've been able to actually establish these non-aggression agreements, we're seeing the shootings back and forth really slow down. So it's definitely a promising practice. But the other critical function of street outreach is actually serving as a bridge to connect highest risk, acutely at risk men and women to some critical services. Everything from mentoring to trauma to education to case management and life coaching to jobs and training to family supports. And I would say that this group here, providing spiritual care is another one of those critical pieces, critical services that's needed for this highest risk population. We're not just condemning our beloved brothers and sisters for bondage and death. We're definitely working with individuals, and we're definitely seeing people change and transform their lives. So this map right here that you're seeing, and you can kind of zoom in, this map will be shared with everybody on this call. The green areas actually has the street outreach boundaries for all of our groups across the city. And there's actually a few areas that just recently got added. So when we provide this attachment to the group, it will have the updates on there. And so you can, if you look kind of all the way, if we look north, if we look northeast, Rogers Park, Uptown covered. But if you go to the heart, like right here where this west side, where and those red dots are actually killings. And then you have other smaller dots, those are non-fatal shootings. So you can kind of see, Humboldt Park, you can see Austin in the 15th district, you can see District 11, which has West Garfield, you got East Garfield, you have, you can also see District 10, which actually has North Lawndale and South Lawndale, which is Little Village to the south of that. Again, you can see where the violence is highly concentrated. We're sharing this map not just for the sake of knowing where street outreach is actually where it has a presence, but when you zoom in on a particular community where those clusters of shootings and killings are, these are your hotspot areas. So we can think about where areas where we can saturate and have a presence at. If you go south, and we're already south now, so you can see kind of the heart right here. Inglewood, which is District 7. You got Inglewood, West Inglewood there. To the east of that, you have like Woodlawn, you have Washington Park, you got Grand Boulevard, which is just north of where the screen is centered right now. But you got Greater Grand Crossing right here as well, which is in districts 6 and 3. You got south of Inglewood, you got Auburn Gresham, you got Washington Heights, even further south. And then in District 5, which has Roseland, Pullman, you got Riverdale, where the Gardens is at. All of that is represented by District 5. And if we scroll all the way east, you'll see even South Shore, you'll see South Chicago, and you'll even see South Deering. These are all communities on the east side, and you can see those boundaries again. There are some areas where there's gaps where we do not have coverage. And so that's important to know as well. But we are in a blessed position right now to actually have street outreach, a presence in at least 36 communities right now. And so most of the communities that's represented by our faith-based leaders on this call, we do have some street outreach presence. And so take the screen share off for a moment. I want to, and I'm moving fast, I'm just going to talk for just a couple of more minutes just for the sake of time. And this really what I want to focus now is the most important part of this segment, and that's actionable items. What can this group actually do to actually help and work in partnership with street outreach and other community partners to actually get the violence down? And so because this is a community of faith-based leaders, I will say, Hebrews 11:6, it definitely helps us to appreciate that it's impossible to please God without faith. And so the title of this whole event is an important question. How is your faith impacting your community? The other thing about faith, and we know at James 2 verses 26, faith without works is dead. And so what works, what actionable items can we actually do to actually help bring down the violence? And so there's 4 specific items that I'd like to see if we can get commitments from this assembly to do. The first is um, for any faith-based leader on the call, if you do not have a relationship with the street outreach partners within your community, then I'm asking that you actually send an email. And Craig, if you can put your email in a chat box, if you can actually send an email to Craig and let us know if you do not have a relationship with street outreach in your community. That's a first critical step. And anybody who does not have a relationship with the street outreach partners in their communities, we will then what we will do is schedule a meet and greet with the street outreach partners so that you can actually know your street outreach workers. And they're working non-traditional hours. We're working when the violence is most acute. So the weekends might look like 4 to midnight, 6 to 2 o'clock in the morning. It could be 2 to 10s during a week. But basically that's what you'll see. The second thing is we want commitments for the faith-based leaders, for yourselves, for members of your congregation to actually be committed to having a presence in hotspot areas in your community. And this is both proactive and reactive. You can start off with a small cadence of at least 2 to 4 times a month. But if there is a commitment there, then we can start the conversations with street outreach with the districts to identify some key areas and then begin to have a presence in those hotspot areas. You don't have to be out at 2 o'clock in the morning, but we can get you out there in those evening and those afternoons. Again, we are already starting the spring, and the shootings and homicides, we traditionally see upticks during spring and summer, those warmer months. So we want to know if there's commitments from each faith-based leader to actually have a presence across hotspot areas within your community. The third commitment is we've been having some conversations, and what we facilitate are what we call regional coordination meetings for areas 1, 2, and 4. And we have everybody from law enforcement to street outreach to community partners to the mayor's office, different violence reduction stakeholders. There are some faith-based leaders on those calls as well. And one of the things we've been talking about in the district has been, the CPD has been raising this because of the trial that's in queue right now. There is an anticipation that there could potentially be some civil unrest related, around the verdict, whichever way it goes. And so again, we want to see if there's commitments. Right now, we have street outreach and other community partners that are willing to, step up, come out, when there's protests, when there's potential looting, and to actually have a presence to help de-escalate tensions within the community. And so I'm asking the faith-based leaders on this call for those who are willing to actually stand with street outreach, with other community partners in the event that we need to deploy a presence in the communities. We want to know who's actually committed to doing that. And then lastly, we're just talking about events now. So they could be shooting responses or prayer vigils. There's always a key role for faith-based leaders in the faith-based community to play with those. And, again, if we have you connected with street outreach and some of our other partners, then we can have you on a distribution list so that you can receive the invite when we actually have those types of events. Other types of events we call light in the night events. A number of our street outreach partners do set those up in hotspot areas. Again, we can get you on the distribution list to share when those events are in your community, to invite your presence so that you can be present. And just recognizing some of the faith-based on here, there are some of you who actually have already been stepping up and have participated in some of these. But if we can get 100% participation, that would be very strong. So again, one, if you do not know your street outreach workers or partners in your community, please send the email to Craig, and we will facilitate that. So at the next meeting, there will not be one faith-based leader on here that does not know their street outreach community. Second, again, We do want a commitment on whether you're willing to have a presence in these hotspot areas. Third, if you're willing to step up for deployment for potential civil unrest. I think the faith-based community being there is a critical role, and the prayers and presence will be critical. And then lastly, events. So I wanna stop there, and definitely feel free. I see some comments in the chat box, but we definitely want to follow up on all of these commitments, and we want to be able to actually report back out to this group what faith-based leaders have made commitments to what, so that we're actually moved by works and actions. So I want to stop there, and I want to pass it over to my brother Melvyn Hayward, and then we'll have some time for some questions and answers, hopefully.
Peace and blessings, everybody. Good to see you all on the screen today. It's an honor to speak to all of you. Just to echo what Jalon talked about, it's extremely important that we have all hands on deck as we try to reduce gun-motivated violence in the city. And, I want to share a little background. About 20 of my years in this service, I worked in the city of LA. And at the height of our homicides, we had reached over 1,300 homicides in the city. And we knew in order for us to bring the violence down in the city of LA, we had to bring everybody together and have individuals work in their space of expertise. And we know that everybody is not equipped to serve the highest risk individuals in the community. But what we do know is everybody has a critical role to play. And whether that's working with young people who need assistance with their homework, whether that's helping families who are in need in the community, whether that's food, clothing, and shelter, or there are folks who are committed to stepping out in the hot spots and supporting violence prevention organizations. We know that the faith-based community plays a critical role. In LA, it took us about 10 years to come together, to organize and mobilize with faith-based organizations, law enforcement, and violence prevention organizations. But what I'll say is we finally hit a sweet spot. And for 10 years consecutively, we were under 300 homicides in a city as large as Los Angeles. And so if we can do that in LA, I know for sure we can make that happen here in the beautiful city of Chicago. But what that will take is commitment, coordination, and dedication to the mission of bringing violence down in the city of Chicago. And we know we have some phenomenal people on the line with expertise that we may not have in the field of violence prevention. And so if we're connected to one another, we're effectively communicating with one another with what we can do and what we won't do, we'll have the ability to move forward to ensure that our city is seeing the levels of violence decrease in a way that we know that can happen. And so I just thank you all for your commitment to continue to join these trainings and continue to do the work in your community. But I'll say it again, we can only do this work together. We can't do it separately. And so violence prevention is committed. We're committed to working with the faith-based community. We're committed to provide the training necessary to help you all elevate your ability to serve the highest risk individuals. And we want to say that we're committed to doing whatever it takes to reduce violence, serve the highest risk individuals and families, and connect the dots so that people can live in the community without fear of violence. That can't happen without you. We thank you for your commitment. We thank you for all that you do in the communities that you serve, and let's continue to work together to do the best that we can to serve those who are in the highest need. I thank you for this time. I thank you all for what you do, and have a phenomenal day.
Thank you so much, Mel. Thank you, Jalon, and thank you, Arne. And we got about, I think, 2 minutes for any quick or burning questions that you want to direct to Jalon or Mel. Arne had to drop off the call, but we'll answer quick questions as far as information. We will get the information out to you. Jalon has already forwarded the map and a contact list for all the outreach organizations around the city. So we'll make sure we get that out to everyone. Any questions? Y'all can see I'm smiling and I'm glowing because Again, I thank God for my brothers on and the entire CRED team, men and women of Chicago CRED, our outreach workers, our therapists, our teachers, trainers, all that make are part of the work. But we thank God that we are joining in with the faith-based community, that we are all coming together to do this work. I see some questions in the chat.
Craig, if I could just say a couple of words, and I was just watching the chats as well, and definitely just want to say thanks for the commitments that have been shared in the chat, and we'll definitely be sure to take count of all the commitments across this virtual assembly. And as Craig shared, we will get that citywide street outreach map to everyone here. We will get the citywide street outreach contact list to everyone here so that everybody is armed with what they need. And again, I mean, those commitments, I keep bringing it up because I value the role that the faith-based community plays. And I think with the commitments that we're talking about, if people can step up to those, I think the city and our communities will be in a much better situation in terms of peace.
Thank you, Jalon. I do want to share something amazing that's happening in 15, that Pastor Epteen is going to be working with IMVC to do a cross training. Pastor Epteen, if you're on, we can pull you up on screen. And here's an example of outreach and the faith-based community, along with the district work in 15, coming together to train faith-based leaders in outreach work. And then the outreach team is going to be trained in faith-based work. So Pastor Epteen, if you want to share a little bit about that.
Hey, thanks, Craig. Hey, guys, appreciate the information that you just shared. One of the things that is so important that I know that's important is that many people that are in church, they don't really know, and you mentioned it earlier, they don't know about street outreach. They don't know what it takes to do that type of work. But also, the street outreach doesn't understand the position that the church role plays. And how do we get to a place where we both have understanding with each other? We got to be with each other. Just like I said earlier, until we be with each other, we won't learn and benefit from the strengths that all of us come together with. So the Institute of Nonviolence, we are planning a inner training where nobody's coming to the table as a guru. Everybody's coming to the table as a learner, because if the church learns how to do better street outreach, and the street outreach teams learn more about the church and its purpose, I believe we'll have a better system. And so that's the plan that we can all take part of at some place in different areas. So thanks, Craig, for just mentioning that. But we're still developing that right now.
Amen. Amen. Again, thank you, Pastor Epteen. Thank you, Jalon. Thank you, Mel. And I'm getting ready. If we can forward any questions that might come up, you have my contact information. I can get questions, and we can get the answers out to you. If you send those to me, my email is nash@chicagocred.com. nash@chicagocred.com. It's in the chat, and we'll be able to answer any questions you might have after this training. Everything is posted to the Building Blocks of Peace page, so website, so you'll be able to get information or listen to the presentation again.